Fantastic. Welcome everyone. As always, if you will provide me a moment, I'm gonna send out some Reddit posts. Sure, people on the ChatGPT Reddit are super tired of me telling them every single time I go live, but well, I don't care. They can. Well, actually, this one doesn't really have anything to do with ChatGPT, so that'd be a little bit rude. I'll just put it on our stream. If I can even post there. The request to post in stream was sent and is pending. In the meantime, you can draft a post. I can't even post there. It looks like we're not posting on Reddit at all today. So we're just going to get started. As always, when we get started, if you get any use out of this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Helps grow the channel. Makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Let's get off of that. Also, before we get into the World Nexus, which is going to be the primary focus of this video, I would like to discuss again the Forever Adventures library. The Forever Adventures library is actually the first project that I started that kicked off this YouTube and what is now going to be the World Nexus. And the goal of the Forever Adventures library is to cooperatively write never-ending choose-your-own-adventure books. And the way we're doing that is we're leveraging the Discord's sort of natural outline system, where you have, your server, and then you've got your categories, and then you've got your channels, and then you've got threads inside of those channels, and we're using that to create our page turns and stuff like that in the books. So you'll see here, the first message that's pinned up here is always the first page of the book. This was written by Darth Zed, and this is the first page of Gavriel's Elemental World. Underneath that first page that you read, anybody who decides to fork off of this first page and continue the story from this inflection point will then come down here and add, they'll create a thread in the main channel outside of Darth Zed's thread, and then they'll link to that thread inside of Darth Zed's message so that you can then use those links to turn pages. And now we're on stage 2, which was written by Cookie. And then we have Marfsnock also wrote a page. And so now we have stage 3, which was written by Marfsnock, and there's nothing beyond that for this particular story. This is actually the furthest one of our stories has gotten so far. So if you're interested in writing and helping cooperatively write these choose your own adventure books, I highly recommend, there's a link down in the description. Jump into the Forever Adventures library, or if you just want to read, you can come in, take the reader title, and that will give you access to all the books, and you can just read them and have a good time. I've recently thrown in a couple of forum channels so that we can discuss the stories. If you have a specific stage that you want to discuss, then you just link to that stage in the forum post that you make. And we should be able to have some great conversations about the stories as they progress, where we want to see them go, where we're thinking about taking them, all kinds of different stuff like that. They have these great new forum pages are really going to make Discord even more valuable for communities than it was before. So very, very exciting. I really, really am happy about that project. We've seen some slow and steady growth. I'm excited to see more growth in the channel or in the server, and so I invite all of you to come join us if you're interested at all in writing. Now moving into the World Nexus. This is something we talked about yesterday, and I said I was going to launch it by Friday. I'm launching it today. because I got super excited about it and I started doing some stuff yesterday and I just kind of got it to its minimum viable product stage. So I want to get it out there, get some people involved because it's really exciting to me. And I think that it will really, really positively impact the tabletop RPG world as well as just storytelling in general. So the way the World Nexus is going to work is, well, let's just read the getting started. So the World Nexus is a place for collaborative world building, a place to help GMs and players spend less time prepping and more time RPing. As tabletop RPGs continue to grow in popularity, more and more time is being wasted repeating work that has already been done hundreds of times. The multiverse of worlds that surround the tabletop community, both officially and homebrew, is so vast it's mind-boggling. Every new player and GM who picks up a book and begins to imagine their epic tale expands that multiverse ever farther. Our goal is to build a space to recycle those worlds, to mix them up and to create new worlds, and to help our community play better and more often. The key to this goal will be modularity, a system that allows for creating at every scope, but maintains a plug-and-play style together. That maintains a plug-and-play style. Together, we will create a multiverse of swirling possibility that will unfold in a unique way every time we open it up. We will leverage the incredible power of Discord to make this a reality. No other resource is as open to collaboration and change, while the available structure of servers, categories, channels, and threads allow us to build deeply and descriptively without compromising neatness and searchability. Beyond that, the ability to link between servers will allow GMs to prep sessions quickly without rewriting a single word and bounce smoothly between creations of an ever-growing number of world builders. We're going to touch on all of this as we go through. We're actually going to build a city today, a single point of interest. We're going to build it that stage so that we can show everybody sort of how it works, what we're expecting, what we're hoping to do, and then we're going to use a little bit of ChatGPT to help us write the descriptions for that city. We're going to use it to help us write a prompt for an image AI so that we can get an image of what our city looks like from a top-down view, and maybe some side views, maybe get some images for some of the characters that you might run into while you're there, all kinds of different stuff. AI is extremely powerful for prototyping some of this stuff out and getting it done quickly and efficiently. So now we'll roll down a little bit here. These ideological scopes are not yet public, so you won't be able to build here. These are going to be places where we build the underlying morality or legal or historical structure that the physical aspects of our world are built on top of, right? So at each one of these scopes, right, you have a person. That person has a moral code. Maybe the moral code that the person who actually creates the character added to the character isn't right for you, so you want to change their moral code. So you might pick a different ideological scope for that character. Families are the same thing, right? Your families have a hierarchy, and they have history passed down, they have morality passed down. So, and families are not just family units, right? Families could be a band of thieves who are drawn together by purpose as opposed to drawn together by kinship. You have elite military units could be considered families, right? These are groups of people bonded by purpose or kinship, and that follow these same structures. So again, you might have different ideological scopes that you want to add to your families, to your points of interest, to your kingdoms, all of these things. So we're going to try and first we want to start building the physical aspects of your world, but also we want to create some new options for the underlying more ethereal aspects of world building. So the first thing we've got here is our first physical scope, which is people. All of these are going to be forum channels. And the way this is going to work is you're not going to build your character in a forum post. You're going to build your character on a totally separate server. And then you're going to create a forum post with a small description, right? You're going to link to the server that houses your character. You're going to provide a brief description of your character, and then you're going to include an image if you want, because the image will actually show up here on the forum if you put the image when you create a new post, right? You can add an image here, and then that image will actually show up as part of the beginning of your forum post, and that's going to make your post much more popular, make your characters or your families or your places get much more use if you add those images. So, and then in each one of these areas, you are also going to have your post guidelines. And this is just my personal description of what these scopes entail. So for people, we've got, this is a place to build individuals. NPC does not just mean the shopkeeper in the town. Every goblin in the cave outside the town could have their own story. Maybe you want to write one. The big bad evil guy is an NPC. Maybe you have a great idea that you want to share. Every individual god is an NPC, although typically they are a little more difficult to get an audience with. The most important thing is, at this scope of world building, is that we have a wide variety of individuals in a wide variety of places doing a wide variety of things. Not every NPC in a campaign needs to have a full backstory and hopes and dreams, but here we want to build fully fleshed out individuals. This will allow GMs to more easily create a world that feels lived in outside of the players at the table and their PCs. There is never too much detail, especially if you format your server so the detail gets deeper and deeper as you go through, deeper and deeper as you go. Then it is incredibly easy for a GM to just drop any unneeded bits. Then if later that NPC needs a little more color, they can revert back and pull more of the story into their world or make it up themselves. Just like when preparing for a session, you can always not use what you prepared. You can never go back and prep more. So this is an opportunity for us to prep together a much wider variety of options for our games. And I think that's going to be really important. Tabletop RPGs are growing in popularity every single year, primarily on the backs of some of the big creators out there that are doing, games online and stuff like that. And something that has been happening is we're starting to run out of game masters. And a big reason for that is playing Dungeons and Dragons, takes a couple hours a week. It's not a big deal. It's a single session, maybe 3 or 4 hours. You go over to a buddy's house, you do it online, whatever it is. As a player, your time investment is relatively small. But as a GM, your time investment is, maybe 3 or 4 times the investment of the average player, because you're building the entire world. Even if you're using an existing setting, like, for example, you're playing in the Forgotten Realms setting, you still have to create the NPCs. You're still having to develop things on the fly and then write notes for and develop characters as your players explore your world. And so we're needing to help with that, right? There's no reason to build all of that, maybe not use it, and then just have all of that time wasted when it can be recycled here, and maybe save everybody more time in what they're doing. Next, we've got families. Again, we're going to have the same general structure. You're going to put your link, a brief description of your family. Don't forget to include an image. And here we have some more post guidelines. So taking a look at the post guidelines for families, I'm sad that this doesn't have something for me to pop it out. I wonder, nope, that didn't work either. If I edit it, will it do it? Nope. Okay, well, whatever. Families are not just the farmer, his wife, and their children. It is It is a group of individuals, any group of individuals, bound together by purpose or kinship. It is the bandits hiding in the woods, attacking passing merchant convoys. It is the Order of Knights based in the capital. It is a pantheon of gods. At this scope, we are starting to look for culture and structure. The knights have a code that they live by. They have history involving battles and great knights they all look up to. Or they have those fallen from their order to serve at the hands of some historic villain. Every scope will begin to expand its reach into the world. Each of these scopes will also expand their reach into the scope before them. So at this point, at this family point, ultimately you have a lot of people, right? A lot of NPCs. And so you can build some of those NPCs in here, but you can also create the concept of how many NPCs you need, right? You need a leader of the order. You need a father, a mother, a child, a cousin who maybe all live together. You need, you need these famous knights from history, right? These are all people that this family needs, and if they're not explicitly, or even if they are explicitly put into the world building step that involved creating this family, you can always go back and pull new people to add to these families, which is part of this modularity that I'm talking about. Again, there is never too much detail. While the GM may never tell their players about Godric the Forsaken, who was stripped of the rank and standing for slaughtering innocents at the behest of an evil king, whose name is never spoken in the halls of honor, that doesn't mean that bit of history won't inform the GM on the motivations of the order and help create a more clear picture in their mind. So very important. The more information, the more detail you have, even if it's not explicitly brought to the table, is still informative for any little bits of improvisation that have to go on the GM's part. Next, we have our points of interest. These are single places where something could be happening. So if we take a look here, this is a single point in the world, a town or village certainly. However, it also includes the Wizard's Tower, that sacred mountain that even the entirety of the that sacred mountain and even the entirety of the Forbidden Forest. It could also be a single building in a town or city that has some special significance. At this scope, we are beginning to build the persistent and tangible parts of our world, not just history and culture that is passed down from word of mouth, but history a player can visit and explore. Even a simple farming town will have old customs and families that have lived and worked the land for generations. Here we will build those locations that these families and individuals can inhabit. There is never too much detail. Again, going to be a recurring theme. Anything you write that encroaches on the territory of another world-building scope can always be adapted or ignored. Maybe your town idea only feels complete with Matilda the barmaid, a bubbly young woman who uses her incredible singing voice to pry coin from road-weary travelers. If so, write it in. It might be just the ticket for a campaign in the making. So again, I cannot iterate enough, because you're going to be able to come to the World Nexus and identify lost my train of thought. Because you're going to be able to come to the World Nexus and pull from other people's bits of world building, you now no longer have to concern yourself about, is this world building taking too much time? I'm only going to complete this city 50% of the way because I still have all of these people that I have to create. Well, you can just go borrow some people, right? Build the bit of world building that you're doing to completion, and then go borrow those things that you need. Build the scopes of the world that you're most interested in, right? If you really like making points of interest, if you've got lots of great ideas for that, but you don't really care to get into the backstory and the origin of all of these random NPC people, then don't build NPCs. Let somebody else do that. Build some interesting points of interest, and let's share and borrow and collaborate in this fun little way where we can mash things together and just create whole new worlds. Next, we're going to have the Kingdoms and Regions scope, which is going to be the largest scope here. During ideological scopes, we're going to add a world scope where we're going to be talking about, like the laws of magic. For example, I think it's the Forgotten Realms is the one that's a really low magic setting. So if you want to identify some things that are world scope laws and rules for a game in a specific setting, then that's something we're going to put in the ideological scopes that I haven't created yet, or haven't gotten nailed down exactly what I want those things to look like yet. So here we are building large collections of points of interest. It could be the lands of a kingdom, or it could be a huge geographical region like a vast desert waste with many hidden secrets. At this scope, we are building a skeleton, a set of rules and norms that will guide us in the selection of the correct modules for each of the previous scopes. For example, a human kingdom with a king that hates orcs because his father was slain while traveling through a mountain range at the edge of the kingdom might not be a good place to plunk down an orc village. However, it may be a great place to bring an orc war party. There is never too much detail. Again, history makes a world feel alive, and even if a huge info dump in the middle of the game isn't exciting, there's no reason a GM can't send your server link to the players so they can explore what you built. Again, anything can be taken out with ease. It is more difficult to fill things in on the fly. At the kingdom scope, you're going to probably have a little bit of trouble with the server structure if you're trying to also create all of the previous scopes within that, right? If you're building a kingdom and you're going to throw a couple of points of interest in there, and you're going to throw some families and individuals in there, then there's only so many levels of nesting you can do in Discord, and you might find that it's not quite powerful enough. But I think if you're creative with it, you can probably get it done. It just might not be quite as neat. And so that's ultimately how the World Nexus is going to break down. So now what I would like to do for the remainder of this stream is I'd like to build a point of interest. We're going to build a village. And then we're going to link it into a post here. And that's going to be sort of the first creation for the World Nexus. So let's get started with that. One of the other things I'd like to mention is I've focused really hard on fantasy here in most of my descriptions, but that is not necessarily a requirement. Right? There are lots of tabletop RPG games that take place in sci-fi settings, that take place in all kinds of different settings. And thanks to ChatGPT, which is something we explored yesterday, there's no reason that you can't adapt things from fantasy settings into sci-fi settings and things from sci-fi settings into fantasy settings. Right? Yesterday we took Legolas and turned him into a Starfleet officer using ChatGPT. So lots of power there to be able to explore worlds and explore characters in settings that maybe they weren't originally designed for. So if you are interested in writing something for sci-fi, write something for sci-fi. If you're interested in writing something for fantasy, write something for fantasy. If you're interested in altering an existing real-world setting because you want to play a historical fiction RPG, or because you want to tell a historical fiction story, then write that. Whatever it is, it can always be adapted, it can always be used. Somebody's going to get some value out of it. So let's create at all of these scopes in all different genres. Because again, the more we have, the more we share, the better our play is going to be, the better our stories are going to be, and the more time we're going to get to enjoy those stories instead of the sometimes arduous task of building the minutia of the world that we're living in. So for our point of interest, I am going to stick with something really, really simple. We are going to create my own server for me and my friends. We are going to make the city Delosia, because why not? It's actually going to be a small village. So we're going to keep it really simple. We're going to create a small village called Delosia, and then we're going to link it into our post. So let's go over to ChatGPT. I love ChatGPT. I'm going to use ChatGPT for everything. And inside of ChatGPT, hey, what's up, man? Inside of ChatGPT, we are going to, hello, I am making a village. I'm even going to go so far as to tell ChatGPT that I'm making this village for a D&D 5e campaign, because then it will help me structure it within that setting, because that is where I would use, personally, the village that I'm creating. And then we'll actually discuss some ways to adapt it. I think after we get done making it, I'm actually going to get ChatGPT to adapt it into a space station for a sci-fi setting, just to prove how powerful ChatGPT is at doing all of that. So hello, I'm making a village for a D&D 5e No, I do not have a paid subscription to ChatGPT. I Oh, it says upgrade plan, so I actually now have the ability apparently to upgrade my plan, but that just happened. Um, but no, I do not have a paid subscription. So hello, I am making a village for a D&D 5e campaign. Please ask me questions one at a time and wait for my answers to help guide me in filling out my village. Sure thing, let's start with the basics. What is the name of your village? The name of my village is Delosia. This is, again, one of the most powerful prompts that I think you can use in ChatGPT is ask me these questions one at a time about this topic that I'm trying to create something for, and then wait for my answers, because it's going to guide you through that creation process and ask you questions that a normal person would want to know about your world, like what the name is and how many residents live there. Let's say 50 people live there, really small village. Got it. And what kind of location is Delosia situated in? Is it near a forest, mountains, bodies of water, etc.? Let's say it is nestled in the bend of a river, and on its non nestled in the bend of a river with water on two sides. And farms and crop lands spreading out on the non-water sides. Interesting. It sounds like the villagers of Delosia have access to both water for fishing, and fertile land for agriculture. What kind of buildings or structures are in Delosia? Delosia, are there any notable landmarks or buildings? Um, let's see. Um, for the sake of this being sort of unique and interesting, because there is sparse forestation in the area, logs are scarce, and so most of the houses are made of mud bricks and thatch roofs. Thatch roofs. As far as notable landmarks, this village hosts a large inn because it is a way station for people using the river to travel. That makes sense. So the inn is a central hub for travelers passing through Delosia. What kind of goods and services does the village offer to these travelers and for its own residents? Are there any special shops or services offered? Um, hmm. Next question. I don't really know how to answer that one. Of course, are there any other notable features of Delosia, such as a town square, a temple, a marketplace, etc.? There is a temple to the goddess of agriculture to ensure good crop yields. Great, it's important for a village to have a place to worship. Are there any other religious or spiritual places in Delosia? For now, we're going to stop working with ChatGPT. Now we're going to move over and we're going to start looking at how we can structure our server for Delosia so that we can then put it into the World Nexus so that people can come and borrow it. So let's take a look at how this can work. So for our text channels up here in our primary category, one thing I want to do is I want to have a place for people OOC chit chat. So I want people to be able to come in here and talk about my world or my village if they want to. So I'm going to make these OOC chit chat channels available to everyone. And then I am going to create a text channel that is specifically for reviews. Because I want people to be able to come in here and tell me what they think of Delosia. And I think that'll probably be it for... let's put reviews at the top. And OOC chit chat. Okay. So we've got our reviews, and then we're going to get rid of this category. Now, we're going to create, nope, not a new channel. We're going to create a new category. And this category is going to be... So we don't need to name the category Delosia, right? Because the whole server is named Delosia. So this is where we're going to start breaking down the important aspects of our village. The first category that I think we need to do is the summary and overview. Okay, so we're going to create a category specifically for summaries and overviews. And then we're going to put in here, we're going to have a channel. And so when you're creating here in Discord, you need to make sure that when you create a category, you want to edit that category, go to permissions, go to your everyone permissions. You want them to be able to view channels, but you don't want to be able to manage channels, manage permissions, manage webhooks, no creating invites with these specific channels, no sending messages in threads, no creating public threads. Right? You don't want them to be able to actually do anything in your channel because you don't want them changing what you've created. Right? No mentions, none of that. We're not managing messages. We're not managing threads. We do want them to read message history. But then there's basically all they're going to be able to do is view the channel and view the message history. And that's important because you want people to be able to come and read, but you absolutely don't want these individuals to be able to come in and start changing your city. If they want to change it, then they can always just copy paste everything you put in here, put it into a different server, and change away. Right? There's nothing saying they can't do that, but we absolutely don't want them doing that inside your server. So then we're going to get in here, we're going to create a channel. And this is going to be the Delosia summary. And this is something we're actually going to create using ChatGPT. And I think we've gone far enough here that we could probably create a nice little summary about Delosia with the information we've already provided to ChatGPT. So write me a summary about Delosia. Let's see what it says. Delosia is a small village with a population of 50 residents located in the bend of a river. The residents of Delosia have access to both water for fishing and fertile land for agriculture, which contributes to their livelihoods. The village is composed of mud brick houses with thatched roofs due to lack of forestation in the area. A large inn serves as a central hub for travelers passing through Delosia and offers food, drink, and lodging. The village also has a temple dedicated to the goddess of agriculture, which helps ensure good crop yields. Excellent. This is a great little quaint description of our town. We're going to take that and we're going to put it right here in our summary. That's fantastic. Now the next thing that's going to add a little bit of flavor to this city that we're creating is going to be giving it some imagery. And I am a horrible artist. I can't even draw a stick figure. Thankfully, ChatGPT and our other AI tools can help me fix that. So now, write a prompt for an image generating AI to create an image of Delosia Let's do create an image of the inn as if you were standing at the end of the street looking at the inn sitting next to the water. Now let's see what it'll give me here. Generate an image of the Delosia Inn viewed from the end of the street with the river in the foreground. Nope, we want the river in the background. I'm going to change that. The inn should be depicted as a large, sturdy building with a thatched roof and wooden beams. The street should be dirt and lined with trees. No, not lined with... Well, it could be lined with trees. You'd probably plant some trees if you didn't have a lot of forestation. Leading the viewer's eyes toward the inn. The river should be visible in the background. Okay, so we're just going to cut this first sentence out because it was wrong. Reflecting the warm glow of the setting sun. People and animals should be visible going about their business in the foreground, adding life and movement to the scene. This is a fantastic... actually, we're going to take this whole thing. We're going to copy it. We're going to go over here to our image AIs. Let's use, sure, the Midjourney V4. I'm going to punch that in there. River in the background. And then we're going to have it generate. Now, if you're a great artist, then this is a step that maybe you won't use. And if you are extremely good at creating and understanding what parts of a city you might need to build, then you might not need to use ChatGPT like I did to ask you questions to get a better understanding of what might go into your city. But if you're not great at those things, but you have this vague idea in your head of a place that you want to create in your world, there's no reason not to use an AI in these ways to help you generate that, to ask you questions, because creativity is collaborative, and ChatGPT is sort of the ultimate collaborator. And I think it's a lot of fun to have. These are some great images, not exactly what we're looking for, but not terrible, not something we couldn't use, right? It's right here in the bend of the river. The river is for some reason in the foreground. Maybe that's because I told it in the background here. I don't know. But that would be the inn. It's obviously not made out of mud and brick and thatch, right? It got that all wrong. And then this is just the river. This is actually really beautiful, and I might go ahead and use this, even though it doesn't have any of the village elements in it. This is a really beautiful picture, and I like it a lot. So I might just go ahead and download that. Oh, why are you not letting me download? That's okay. We can always... I did not prep, so I don't know what of my file folders will come up if I put save image as. So we're not going to save this. This is something I'm going to add later. Because I don't want to do this on stream because I don't know what's going to appear from my computer if I open that right now. So we're not going to, because that is prudent. But as you can see, there's lots of fun things you can do to get some interesting art, and I'll just go ahead and add art to the server later on my own. Fantastic. So normally I would say I'm going to put that art in here with the summary. And then I'm going to create another channel in here that's a text channel that's going to be overview. Yeah, I don't really need an overview. I think summary is perfectly fine. I'm going to leave this, right, this could just be a single channel somewhere, but I want to keep this separated. So I'm going to leave it as is, and I'm going to create a new category. And this category is going to be important places. And now, inside of these important places, we're going to break down and we're going to create channels that are going to describe each of the important places we've created. So the first important place we created was the Delosia Inn. And again, these will be as descriptive. Oh. Come on now. You can do it. Okay, fine. I didn't want you anyway. We're going to create the Delosia Inn. And the way we're going to do this is now we have an opportunity to write about the Delosia Inn. But something that could be important about the Delosia Inn is perhaps its proprietor. And maybe we want to also create the person that runs the inn. And we might not create them as completely in depth as we would if we were creating a whole server just dedicated to them. But maybe we want to give them a little summary, give them a look, create a picture for them, whatever it is. So when we start talking about the Delosia Inn, instead of just starting to type things in here, we're going to create threads. So we're going to name our thread this thread is going to be description. And inside this thread, we're going to create a description of our inn. I like the description that this gave when it tried to get an AI to create it. So we're going to use some of that description, and we're going to say the Delosia Inn sits at the edge of the river. Now this could be any river, and again, that is something else that normally, as a world builder, you're going to have to create, right? This river has to have a name. But here it doesn't necessarily have to have a name, because that is another point of interest or region that could be created by a different world builder, right? Some river that exists maybe completely independently of anything else, and you can just plunk that river right down into your world. And you don't necessarily have to know a lot about that river. Maybe your party or your story only ever briefly exists in Delosia. Maybe your party is traveling on that river, and that river is extremely important, and you want to have a place for them to stop for a night, and you've got Delosia, you've got the Delosia Inn, bingo bambo, they stop by, they stay in, and they meet some interesting characters because it's a way station for travel, and so there's people from all over the world. Maybe there's some good plot hooks there, whatever it is. But having to create the entirety of Delosia for that single night experience is why world building for tabletop RPGs takes up so much of a GM's time. And when we start creating these modular plug and play concepts like this, then as the GM, you're going to be able to just pull something from whatever scope you need, right? Before your game, while you're doing your prep, spend a little bit of time exploring the World Nexus. We've got tags to help you narrow down what you're looking for. You grab a couple of things that are interesting. You save the links, maybe bring them into your own whatever program you use for taking notes, or if you have a server where you do your session prep if you're doing an online game, or wherever it is that you do your notes for your online game, you can just copy paste those links into those notes as hyperlinks, and then use those hyperlinks just to travel straight to those servers. And so it's extremely fast to get around from, an outline or a note structure into the more detailed world building creations of others without having to do any big copy pasting, without having to do any, scrambling to write down all of this crazy information that you may or may not actually need. And then while you're talking your character or your players through whatever aspect of their campaign that they're doing, then you're able to look up that information sort of on the fly and not have to be creating it out of thin air, which is an extremely difficult skill to learn. So the Delosia Inn, I don't even know how to spell inn, sits at the edge of the river. It is a much larger structure than any other in the town because Delosia is the only potential way station for river-bound travelers for more than a day in either direction. The Delosia Inn plays host to a large variety of travelers, and there is always good food and good food, good music, and interesting stories to find here. Now, my descriptions are extremely small, right? We're only going to be spending, say, an hour building Delosia, and we're doing this all very much on the fly. So Delosia is not going to be an exceptionally fleshed out village. And I imagine that there are individuals out there who can create on this particular scope or on the scope of an individual much more quickly than I can and much more completely than I can. I am not by any means masterful at this particular aspect of the craft. And that's why I lean so heavily on things like ChatGPT to help focus that creativity. But I am very good at engineering things and manipulating the rules and structures of, for example, Discord to be able to create the tools required to do this, which is why I'm launching the World Nexus. Not because I'm super excited to put my own creations out there, but because I'm super excited to create a space for people much more talented than me to put their own creations. So let's take a look. The Delosia Inn sits at the edge of the river. It is a much larger structure than any other in the town because Delosia is the only potential way station for riverbound travelers. I've messed all that up. For more than a day in either direction. The Delosia Inn plays host to a large variety of travels, and there's always good food, good music, and interesting stories to find here. So the point of this is that I wanted to show you how you could use threads to add additional information. So we're down to talking about the Delosia Inn, and we've talked about the description of the Delosia Inn, but now we can open up another thread, and we can name that thread Barnaby Tabernacle. And Barnaby Tabernacle is going to be the proprietor of the Delosia Inn. I am not too familiar with using Discord permissions and settings. Discord permissions and settings are extremely easy. When you create a server, you get all of the Discord permissions and settings, right? You can do anything you want. And then the standard settings that it creates for everyone basically gives them the ability to go into any existing channel and talk or write inside of that channel. Right? They're going to be able to use, emojis and stuff like that. It gives them the basic interaction permissions that you would normally expect to be able to do in a forum setting or in a chat setting. If you want to restrict that, like you do when you're actually creating your summaries and writing about the bit of world building that you're doing, then you just go in like I did. Right, absolutely need to avoid trolls wrecking it. So you just go in like I did, and you turn everything off except their ability to view the channel and their ability to view message history. If all they can do is view message history and view channel, then they'll see everything you wrote and they can't interact with anything. And if you do that, and I actually messed it up when I did this, when you create the categories, if you do that per category that you create, then the channels inside of those categories adopt what those categories permissions were. So you just need to do it every time you create a new category, so that way you'll leave your chit chat and your review channels up here open so that anybody can talk in them. And then down here where you're actually doing your world building, all of these will be off limits except for viewing. And I absolutely recommend getting a buddy or getting maybe a second Discord account or whatever, and inviting yourself to your server, and then going through and just quickly go into every single channel and try and type some stuff. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Is you have to give them permission to view two separate things though. You have to give them permission to view the channel, and you have to give them permission to view the message history. So it breaks view only into these two separate things. So we'll actually go back into it and edit category, permissions. And this is, you've got your everyone right here. And this is also great because you could have collaborators, right? So you could have other members who, your friends IRL or your party or whatever. You could have collaborators in here and you could give them a totally separate role and give them permission to change anything that they wanted. And then you could write together about something. When you create the server, you are the admin. And so you can go in and change these permissions. So what you want is you want them to be able to view the category or view the channels inside of this category. And then you want to give them no permission to do anything else, right? You don't want people getting invited based on these channels because the invite will already be set. And they can invite based on the original chat channels. So you're closing all these out, you can't do any of this, can't manage messages, can't manage threads. You can read message history, and you can view the channels, and that's all you can do. And that will keep anybody from being able to come in here and do anything to what you've created. And then just bammo, save that, and that's going to, now, You need to do that before you create the channel, or you have to go back into the channel, edit the channel's permission, and then tell it to sync. Oh, it says permission synced with category important places. Excellent. And so now you see it's synced in. Fantastic. You can give anybody admin permissions, yes. They do not have the ability to become admin by default. You have to specifically give them admin permissions, because once you create a server, you get this little crown right here. You're the server owner. So nobody gets any permissions without you giving them those permissions. So nobody can just come into your server and start wrecking stuff unless you give them permissions that you didn't want to. So you just have to be careful about who you give permissions to. Discord is a fairly easy to use program once you start working with it a little bit, which is why I think it's so useful for this particular use case. But we're back in our Delosia Inn. We're creating our thread about Barnaby Tabernacle. And Barnaby Tabernacle is the proprietor of the Delosia Inn. And I'm going to finish that message right there, and then I'm going to go in here and add a new message because I want that to be on its own line. So for Barnaby Tabernacle is the proprietor of the Delosia Inn, and once a riverboat captain, Barnaby fell in love with Delosia in his many visits. The residents were always very nice to travelers, and when he retired, he decided to settle here and help others enjoy the hospitality of Delosia themselves and rest on the long river journey. And that's just a little description of Barnaby Tabernacle. But then also, we can work with ChatGPT or work with ourselves if we're talented artists or whatever it is we're going to do. And we can now create a picture of Barnaby Tabernacle. And we could include in his summary more information about, what he looks like, scars he might have. We could tell some stories about some adventures he had been on as a riverboat captain. We could tell all kinds of different stuff about Barnaby Tabernacle. And we could even, if we wanted to, we could create a link right here to another Discord server and create a completely separate Discord server for Barnaby Tabernacle that people could access here, and that we could also put in the forum channel for the World Nexus under people, and then people could just use Barnaby Tabernacle independently, or they could use him as the proprietor of Delosia through our creation of the Delosia Inn here. So there's tons of nesting opportunity here, tons of nesting ability, tons of ability to use hyperlinks to get people moving around where they need to be moving, and tons of ability to add just tons and tons of depth to the creations. Now this is actually taking way longer than I expected because I've been talking as I've been doing it, so we're definitely not going to complete Delosia in our single session here. Maybe we'll come back to it tomorrow, or maybe I'll do it on my own and just get it posted. But this is what I'm talking about with the World Nexus, is the ability to create cooperatively like this and modularly like this and allow for everybody to make little pieces and to borrow little pieces and just stop having to get bogged down so much on recreating the wheel every single time a new person wants to play a tabletop RPG game. How many servers do you think are optimal? I mean, we're going to be able to have an infinite number of servers for each individual world building piece. I think that a single server is optimal, right? If you're going to build Delosia, even if you want to build some individual people in Delosia, I would recommend um, keeping those individuals all in the same server. I mentioned that you can create another server, for example, for Bartleby Tabernacle, but I wouldn't actually do that. That's an extremely ambitious way to go about it. And the point here is to try and cut back on what some people are having to do in order to create these worlds. So I would limit Barnaby Tabernacle to just his basic description there. And then if somebody needed to flesh out Barnaby Tabernacle, then they could just go to the people scope and they could find a person that they think suits Mr. Tabernacle's identity. And then even if you're not going to be keeping the same name, you can just steal that character, skin it over Barnaby Tabernacle, and then now you have this much more fleshed out character because your PCs have decided to interact with this person, right? And so now you're totally done. But at the different scopes, I would recommend trying to stick within that scope, right? So we're building Delosia. We want to build Delosia's history. We want to build, when was it founded? By who was it founded? What purpose does it serve? How many people live there? Is it a part of a specific kingdom? Or is it sort of just this independent village that's on the outskirts of a kingdom or something like that? All kinds of interesting stuff can happen there. Is there a bandit camp nearby? Is there another point of interest nearby that lots of people come to go visit because there's an old temple to some old god? And you don't even necessarily have to build out that temple. Absolutely, some templates would be wonderful. I am not the person to make those templates because I'm just not. I do not have an eye for detail necessary for creating aesthetically pleasing server templates like that. But absolutely, because you can create servers and use templates, if somebody created a really good template for a server where you would host a person and a family and a point of interest and a kingdom, I would have no problem posting those up here so that people could get access to those templates. An empty map to complete. So this is something that is also another great use case. If because these server links can be used as hyperlinks, right? You can just link directly to each of those servers. You can absolutely get a map, and then inside of that, but that map could be any map, right? It doesn't have to be a map that I make. It's whatever your world map is, and then you can create, if you're using World Anvil or one of the other big note-taking programs, you create markers on those maps, and then you just create text hyperlinks that take you to the specific Discord servers for the different places. So that's absolutely a thing you can do. And that's what I think makes using Discord servers in this manner so valuable, is that you just link back to them in whatever manner you want to, however it is you organize your games. You just link back to the server and you have all of your information, and it's set up in a manner that's extremely easy to parse, right? You've got important places inside of Delosia. You've got the Delosia summary. You're going to have images, right? So if you're borrowing Delosia and somebody's created an image, then you no longer have to draw out an image or go search the internet for an image that would maybe be useful in this particular situation. The person who's created Delosia already did that. So then you just save the image and then send that image over to your characters while you're playing the game. And you say, hey, this is Delosia, this is what you see, here's the description, I'm telling you all this fluffy fun stuff, yada yada yada. The image downloads, they look at it, now they have this idea of what Delosia is in their minds. And so much of this, we're going to be able to build so much more deeply for every tiny little aspect of world building, because we're not going to be worried about building everything. If every GM now is, say, spending 12 hours a week, which I don't think is an unreasonable amount of time to assume. I don't know, because I don't use D&D Beyond, and I don't think that when you're playing online, I personally don't think that Discord is the best place to use as a virtual tabletop. There's a really good program called Owlbear Rodeo. It's a web app, and it's a really, really lightweight virtual tabletop where you just throw up. Right, normally you would be playing Theater of the Mind, and then you maybe throw up a combat map or something like that so that people can move tokens around for the more technical aspects of the game. Um, but yes, I don't think that Discord is very useful as a virtual tabletop. Discord is extremely useful as a tool for prepping games, and it is a very useful tool for your audio during games and for your combat, or not combat, for your communication and conversation in between games. Right? You just throw up a server, you invite your party. Yes, bots are a thing for Discord. I just don't think that Discord is a good place to play your game. It's it's just not as functional, right? If you put images up of battle maps, you can't move tokens around in Discord. And your virtual tabletop, one of its primary and best functions is to act as your play map for combat scenarios. Because everything else about tabletop RPGs is really kind of theater of the mind. And tabletop RPGs lend themselves very well to theater of the mind. I mean, it might be. I've My experience playing tabletop RPGs is very limited, and my experience playing tabletop RPGs using Discord bots is exactly zero. And my experience playing tabletop RPGs using Discord bots will continue to be zero because I don't intend to ever do it. I just don't think it's a good way to go. I don't think it's convenient. I think it would be more convenient to use something like Owlbear Rodeo. I think there are some things that are just too difficult to force, and I think that's one of them. But yeah. So this is how the World Nexus is going to work. One thing that I am going to need some assistance with, if anybody who watches this doesn't mind, is one of the problems that is going to crop up is individuals coming into the World Nexus, and this is extremely mobile friendly because Discord is extremely mobile friendly, absolutely. So one of the issues that's going to come up is individuals taking third-party copyrighted world building and then publishing it on the World Nexus as their own. And some of that is published for profit. And so I don't want copyrighted published materials being copy pasted onto servers and then linked in the World Nexus and causing this big problem of pirating existing copyrighted works. And so the way we're going to avoid that is I'm going to try and reach out to a bunch of these third-party world-building creators and give them a link to the World Nexus so that they can see when new stuff is posted. Maybe a member of their team will just periodically check and see if any of their information or their world building has been brought to the World Nexus, and then they can let me know and I can investigate. I won't obviously just take their word for it because that would be silly. But I will investigate, I will look into their third-party products, and I will look into how closely those third-party products are related or identical to whatever it is that was published on the World Nexus. And then I will remove content that maybe is infringing on somebody's copyright from the World Nexus. But ultimately, I don't think it should be a huge problem. But I do want to invite those creators to access the World Nexus so that they can have a little peace of mind and help me identify situations where maybe their copyrights are being infringed on. So if you know any creators, any YouTube creators, any, like the Kobold Press does lots of stuff where they release third-party content. Any third-party creators that you know that do publish content, or even that maybe don't publish copyrighted content, but that are constantly doing world building on YouTube videos and stuff like that, who maybe their work exists under a Creative Commons license, I would still like those individuals to be attributed when their information is posted on the World Nexus. So again, if we're getting things that are being stolen and marked as, oh, this is mine, even though somebody else created it, I would like to at least be able to attribute the proper people when Creative Commons licenses are being used. So if everybody will help me do that, anytime you see content on the World Nexus that doesn't belong to the person who claims it, or if you know of any creators who I could reach out and contact to and explicitly invite to the World Nexus so that they have the ability to observe when that happens, then I think that will keep us in the green, keep us compliant, and keep us as a positive part of the community as opposed to relegating us to a shadowy part of the community where people go to pirate. Because I don't want that to be the stigma. I want it to be a place of collaboration and creation, not a place of theft and um, whatever other word. I didn't have two words, so now that sentence just kind of trailed off into nothing. You know what I mean? Yeah, all of my stuff will be source ChatGPT. I don't even think I'm capable of creating something without the use of the AI. So the last thing I want to do is we've got a summary of Delosia here, and I mentioned that I want to talk about how we can adjust settings. So Delosia was created in sort of a low fantasy setting, and so I want to create Delosia. You're just spitting out terminology now. I don't even know what you're talking about, Paul. Um, Delosia is a small village with a population of 50 residents. So this is created in a fantasy setting, but I want to use it in a sci-fi setting. The way I'm going to do that is I'm actually going to go to ChatGPT, and this is something that I think everybody should use ChatGPT for, because it is a great way to recycle your content in extremely different ways. So we're going to use our summary of Delosia, and now I'm going to tell ChatGPT, please adapt this village to be a space station in a sci-fi universe. And now we're going to see what So Delosia Station is a small self-sufficient space habitat with a population of 50 residents located on the edge of a remote star system. The residents of Delosia have access to a hydroponic farm that provides food and oxygen as well as a small-scale mining operation for resources. The station is comprised of modular units connected by airlock passageways, with each unit having a designated function such as living quarters, agriculture, mining, and recreation. A central hub serves as the main gathering place for the residents, offering food, drink, and socializing opportunities. The hub also doubles as a docking station for travelers and cargo ships passing through the system. The station is powered by a fusion reactor, providing clean energy to all the necessary systems and ensuring the inhabitants can sustain themselves indefinitely. A temple to the deity of technology housed in the central hub helps the residents maintain and repair their advanced technology and equipment. The residents of Delosia Station work together to maintain a station and ensure their own survival in the harsh, unforgiving environment of space. I mean, I don't intend to create a terms of service. Like, I've got a rules page, and I'm going to throw some rules in there. But calling it a terms of service is a little more official than I think is warranted. But yes, there will be a rules page, and I will action and remove people who break those rules, for example, by posting copyrighted content. And that is written in the rules already. Um, Thank you. I understand what you were trying to say now. I get it. But this is absolutely one of the best interactions that ChatGPT can have with the World Nexus, and that is taking characters and places and the things that we create and adapting them specifically to the environments that you're trying to use them in. ChatGPT is extremely, extremely good at doing this. Yesterday, we basically turned Legolas into Spock. It was awesome. So this is the World Nexus is an idea that I had before I even knew ChatGPT was a thing. I do want to avoid liability, but also I don't think that anybody would come after me, right? If the first step in any legal action like that is always a cease and desist letter, and because I can't be expected to know every possible copyright infringement that could happen on the Discord server, right? That's impossible. So if at any point somebody did feel like my server was being used to pirate copyrighted information, then the legal team for whoever owned that copyright would just send me a letter notifying me and saying, hey, we need you to take action or we're going to take action. Because if they just came straight after me, A, they wouldn't get anything from me. I don't intend to ever make any money off of the World Nexus, so what are you going to sue me for? Nothing. And second, if you started taking all of that to court just over and over and over again, right, it would just overrun the legal system. So the course of action is always send a letter, let somebody know, advise the action you would prefer for them to take, and then we move on. There's no threat of some immediate action coming out of blue. C and D isn't a cease and desist letter is nothing. A cease and desist letter is just notification of potential wrongdoing and the steps that we would like for you to take. Cease and desist doesn't mean anything. It's not a legal action. It's a courtesy, right? And it's a courtesy that will get extended. Nobody's going to just sue me out of the blue. And if they did, then they would lose, because how am I supposed to know? I can't. So piss on you. My concern is not for my own legal protection. My concern is the how people perceive the World Nexus. Right? If we're just a place where people put a bunch of pirated content, then that's all it'll ever be. And then it doesn't become this cooperative, creative, fun experience. It just becomes this place where people go to pirate content. And so my concern is to remove pirated content to avoid that stigma for the sake of providing a better environment, not for the sake of some legal protection. Because I don't need any legal protection. But yeah, so if anybody knows any content creators that I should notify of the existence of the World Nexus for the sake of them being able to come on here and say, hey, this is my content and somebody's stealing it, so that I can look into and verify that information, then let me know and I will reach out to those people. I'm going to get on YouTube and I'm going to try and find some creators on my own and reach out to them and let them know what's going on. And also come join the World Nexus and post your little bits of world building. It's not just about tabletop RPGs, although that'll probably be the primary use. Um, it will it will also be really good for use for creating stories, particularly with ChatGPT. Grabbing a couple of people in a couple of places, uploading their summaries or copy pasting their summaries into ChatGPT, and then having ChatGPT write you your own little personal stories about these individuals and places, I think would be a lot of fun and would give you a really personalized story experience. It doesn't have to be about playing a tabletop RPG. It can just be about experiencing some different worlds. And then also, I'm going to continue to post the links to the World Nexus and the Forever Adventures library in all of my future channel or in all of my future videos. So come join us on the World or on the Forever Adventures library also if you feel like writing or reading our collaboratively written, never-ending Choose Your Own Adventure books. They're very interesting. They haven't gotten very far, but the more people we get involved, the more people who write, the more interesting those stories will be. So thank you all very much for your time and have a great day.